Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Today, I got a massive question for you, and it really comes off the back of last night's game here against the Penrith Panthers and the Cowboys. 26-20. The Penrith Panthers get it done again against the Cowboys, and just a normal Penrith performance where they just back their defense all the way to the end, and they end up coming away with the chockies. It wasn't the most amazing game from the Penrith Panthers. You know, they started out really on fire. Then the Cowboys brought it all the way back to almost pip them, but then the Panthers just, their defense holds up all the way to the end. But that's not the question I come to you guys with. There's nothing about the Penrith Panthers here. It actually has a little bit to do about Penrith. But Brian To'o, obviously the 100th game last night for Brian To'o, and really, should we start talking about Brian To'o as one of the greatest wingers of all time? Or, you know, I know it's so hard to really come at, you know, and say, you know, people are the greatest of all time, like Nathan Cleary's doing with that at the moment, even though his accolades really hold up with some of the best, you know, halfbacks of all time. It's so hard to really say they're the greatest of all time when they're currently playing, and that's always an argument in itself there. But when his career is said and done, is he possibly the greatest winger we've ever seen? And I really want to give that out to you guys because I got a couple of stats, you know, especially after last night's game with, you know, the amount of stats he came out with in that game were absolutely incredible. So let's get straight into it, guys. Obviously, last night's game, 26-20 win over the Cowboys. This is Brian To'o's stats last night, and these are absolutely mental if you actually haven't seen them already. 227 run meters a game in this game, which is absolutely incredible. You know, obviously, we've seen the Joey Manu's of the world and all that get around these marks, but Brian To'o does this consistently, and we'll get through his career stats overall, and you get to see where his sort of run rate is and everything he does really well. And only 30 of those were coming off kick return meters, which is a mental stat in itself. So really coming down to it, just close to 200 meters he just did, you know, out of just hard carries out of his back end. So that's absolutely unbelievable. 77 post-contact meters for a winger. That is on a different level. 2 line breaks. The big stat here, 21 tackle breaks in a game. That is mental. He had one moment in the game where it just looked like you could not get him down just because he's such a smaller body. He's a tank. He just busts tackles. You know, I've compared him back in the past to like a Matt Utai. He always reminded me of Matt Utai and that, but Matt Utai has never been at this level. This is like a second gen type of level of Matt Utai, and it's just on a different level of that. So just in comparatively to other best wingers in a competition we'll get to a little bit later on, like he's just on a different level. He does it on every area of the game. I think he didn't even, made 5 tackles, didn't miss any tackles in this game. And overall as a career average, he holds at 86 tackle efficiency. So like defensive wise, he's one of the better wingers in the competition. Attacking wise, he's one of the better players in the competition as well. And he also, you know, he scored 1 try tonight, but we'll go through his try scoring stats and stuff because I feel like that's where people maybe look at him and go, maybe he isn't the try scoring phenom. Maybe that's where he lacks in winger. We'll go through the stats comparatively to some of the best wingers in the competition currently right now. So overall career stats for Brian To'o right now, and this is really helps the argument overall. So he actually scored 69 tries in 100 games currently right now, so holding a 0.7 per game average, which is mental if you actually compare it to everyone else in the competition. We'll get to that shortly. Average run meters 187 per game, 196 this season per average this season, which is a fucking crazy stat. We've already gone through his tackle efficiency at 86%, but only misses 0.7 tackles per game, so barely misses 1 tackle per game as Brian To'o, so one of the best defensive wingers in the competition stats wise, and 8.4 tackle breaks per game in this 24 season currently right now, which is actually one of the highest in the last 10 years. If he consistently holds up this tackle break percentage, the last average game percentage actually comes from Jordan Rapana, but he only did that in a 2-game sample, which was ended up being 11.2 tackle breaks in a game. So, you know, obviously 2 massive games from Jordan Rapana, and then he didn't see him for the rest of the season, holds up with that. Every other really tackle percentage comes down to, you know, 8.2, 8.1. So he holds at the moment the best tackle break percentage, you know, in the competition for the last 10 years. So I know it's so early on in the season, there's still such a big sample size to come, but if he holds this up, this is actually one of the greatest tackle breaking seasons in the competition, you know, in the last 10 or so years. So that's a mental stat there. Now, so let's going to compare him to some of the greatest wingers of all time. So who are your greatest wingers of all time? Make sure you comment them down below. But I just swung over to the Raw, had a 25 in 25 best wingers in the competition. They really went down to who is their top 10 wingers of the competition. I don't fully agree with the list that they got here, but you know, the list, you know, holds up. There's some amazing wingers in this competition here, but Brett Morris obviously tops this list currently right now. Josh Adokar at 2nd, Wendall Sailor at 3rd, Hazem masri at 4th, Nathan Blacklock at 5th, Alex Johnston at 6, Tamana Tahu at 7, Israel Folau at 8, Lottie Dakiri at 9, Matt Singh at 10, and then moving on, you got Manu Vatuveis of the world, you got, you know, the Blake Fergusons of the world, you got Vunivalus, you got Valentine Holmes, Adam McDougall's, everyone remembers Adam McDougall, absolute freak of a winger, Daniel Tupou definitely holds up as well, Semi Radradra, Jordan Rapana, utai, and Matt King, who is one mental underrated winger in this competition right now. But let's go off a couple of those top 10 wingers in the competition overall. So I'll start off with the Fox. So really the best thing I could give to the Fox is probably he's a better try scorer, but how much of a better try scorer is the Fox comparatively to Brian To'o? So currently right now, the Fox actually scored 133 tries in his career in NRL competition in 169 games in the NRL competition right now. So that's a 0.8 per game average. And at his peak, he only averages 126 meters per game. And that's at his peak. He's had, you know, other seasons of like 101 and, you know, stuff like that. So nothing crazy going on there, and holds an 83 tackle efficiency. So definitely not as high as a Brian To'o there. Now I want to move on to someone like, you know, that has a lot of points potential. So, you know, Hazem masri, obviously the best parts of his game is, you know, he's got his try scoring, but he's goal kicking and stuff like that. But going off his try scoring, 159 tries in his career overall, 317 games overall in Hazem masri's career in NRL, and he only averaged a 0.5 percentage. So, you know, Brian To'o comparatively there is up higher than Hazem masri on tries alone. Obviously, Brian To'o does not kick goals, and I think that's what made Hazem masri special. So if you want to hold that against him, that's really up to you guys overall there. Now, I'm going to move on to another winger because obviously there's not a lot of stats, and this is one thing NRL really need to figure out and really get right because, you know, I wanted to go back into history and see, you know, the run meters of each winger and stuff like that because, like, Brian To'o right now is on an all-time level, but you want to prove that to everyone, but it's really hard to because you can't go into really in-depth stats of the old school wingers. So you can get like little game per averages and stuff like that every, like, you know, if you go really deep into it. So I've got a couple of guys here with a couple of run meter stats and stuff, but this is where he really holds up. So Manu Vatuvei, obviously my New Zealand Warriors, one of my favorite wingers of all time. If we're going to have a top 10, you know, I want to chuck Manu Vatuvei in there being a Warriors fan. So Manu actually scored 152 tries in his 226 game career. So that's actually a 0.6 per game average for Manu Vatuvei, which is actually a really, really solid stat there. You know, not as good as the Fox, but better than Hazem masri's of the world. And Manu Vatuvei actually averaged 120 run meters per game in his career. That's really off a couple of stats that I've really come down to, you know, online where I've actually found. So Brian To'o is averaging at least another 50 more meters currently in his career or so, more so than a Manu Vatuvei, which is absolutely mental. Manu was a bigger body, and that was the best part about Manu. He was, you know, out of his backhand hard work rate, can score tries in the corner. That was Manu Vatuvei. He had errors in his game. That was probably the biggest thing that will hold him back in this discussion here, where Brian To'o, you know, he's one of the most consistent wingers in the competition. You can't hold that against him at all. Another winger I want to bring up to you guys, and I feel like he's always, for me, in the underrated category, and that's Tamana Tahu. If you actually watched a lot of Tamana Tahu back in his older days, he was absolutely incredible as try-scoring phenom for the Newcastle Knights and the Parramatta Eels when he came back in that little period there. So overall, in Tamana Tahu's career, he scored 121 tries in 196 games. So that's at a 0.6 per game average, which is a really, really solid stat for Tamana Tahu. So currently running up there with a Manu Vatuvei and around that sort of mark there. Obviously, you know, if you go on like other decimal points after that, I'm pretty sure Tamana Tahu was like at a 0.67 or 0.65. That held him a little bit over Manu Vatuvei's 0.6, like 3 or 4, something like that from my memory when doing these stats here. So Tamana Tahu still not reaching the Brian To'o, you know, Brian To'o at 0.7 per game, guys. This is a mental stat overall for Brian To'o, and I feel like, you know, this is holding up currently right now with some of the best wingers of all time. These are big names I'm bringing up with you guys here. The next one I'll bring up to you guys, obviously, is Wendall Sailor. So Wendall Sailor, for a lot of the older generation, is possibly the greatest winger we've ever seen. You know, Wendall came out, he was so athletic, you know, his speed on the edge, but he was a tackle breaker freak, the run meters out of the back end, but also the try scoring phenom too, you know, just the magic that guy has in his hands and stuff. He's just on a different level. Obviously went to rugby union, killed it in rugby union, came back to league again and just kept killing it from there. So a massive shout out to Wendall Sailor, definitely an all-time great, won 4 titles, 3 State of Origin titles, a guy that definitely should be held up there with the best wingers of all time argument right now. So actual Wendall Sailor, 127 tries in 222 games. That's actually a 0.5 average, so that's not up there with Manu Vatuvei. That's just behind Manu. That's just behind Tamana Tahu. That's just about where Hazem masri is currently right now. But where Wendall Sailor was known to do a lot of his best work too, guys, is out of his back end. The best stat I could really find out of, run meters out of his back end and all that sort of stuff was actually in the 2001 season. I found a, article that came out there where he actually averaged that season 153 run meters per game, which is mental, but we're still not hitting those Brian Toto levels. Like currently right now, Brian Toto is running for, 196 meters per game. And then you look at, his overall average is 187 meters per game. We're getting close to nearly 200 meters per game, and he does that consistently. And that's what's so mind-boggling. There's not too much everyone going, oh my God, this winger is on a different level. There is that, but I feel like we've done that so much of a period that we've just kind of forgot about and just gone, this guy's just a freak, and we just let it be there. But we just want to talk about where is he at all time, and this is a crazy stat here overall. Now, the last winger I want to give to you guys is, for me, a lot of people's consensus greatest winger of all time, and I would mostly agree because Brett Morris is the guy I want to talk about here. Brett Morris is honestly one of the most consistent wingers I've ever seen in a competition. Always, pulled out the best tries in the best moments. He's won, 2 premierships. He's the top 5 try scorer of all time. He's an absolute freak overall. So this is where this try scorer stat should really push a Brian Toto currently right now, if you really think about it. But actually, Brett Morris only had 176 tries in 276. I didn't mean to say only, because that's actually a mental stat. He averages at 0.6 tries per game. Brian Toto right now in his career is at 0.7 tries per game. That is a freakish stat. Thinking out of the two, you think the better finisher is Brett Morris. And I would still say, in moments, Brett Morris can get himself in the air a little bit better. He could probably get himself in those moments. But I've seen Brian Toto do those similar things. Now let's switch it around, because Brett Morris was a good runner of the ball. He could tackle break. He was good out of the back end at moments too. His best average run meters ever, in the NRL career that he's had, is 122 per game with the Dragons in his early career with the Dragons. And, overall, it's been around that 115, 100 rate. Brian Toto blows that out of the water with 187 per game overall. That is a mental stat overall. So obviously Brett Morris has 2 premierships here. That's a big one there. But if you look at Brian Toto, he's had 3 premierships now. He's been in a, back-to-back, obviously, Origin and stuff with the Blues, a couple of years ago, where they actually had a little bit of a really good success over with Nathan Cleary and all those boys there. But Brian Toto, when it gets to the end of the season, his accolades are probably going to be better than a lot of these wingers that we're throwing up with you guys right now. His stats are going to be better than all these wingers that we're throwing up with you guys now. What is holding Brian Toto back to be called the greatest winger of all time? Is it the whole thing that we aren't really allowing people to give that title until after the career is finished? And I do agree with that. I think a lot of times we do say, the Nathan Clearys of the world currently right now, maybe when his career finishes, we'll look at everything. We just lay the book down and go, he was the greatest halfback of all time. It just feels weird to do that while they're still playing football. But all I'm trying to say here, guys, is Brian Toto is on his way to doing something absolutely incredible, especially blowing out of the water that Matt Utai sort of look what he had when he first came into competition. I was thinking the same thing, and I absolutely adore Matt Utai. He was one of my favorite wingers when I was a little boy growing up. But Brian Toto is doing that at a whole different click. He's a next generation type winger, and I think we all should get behind him currently right now, because those stats last night, 227 meters in a game, 21 tackle breaks, is just on a different level, and scored the first try in the match for the Penrith Panthers to get over the top of the Cowboys last night in his 100th game, guys. This guy is an absolute freak. So I want to throw it back out to you guys. Obviously, comment down below maybe your top 5 wingers of all time. Where does he compare to you guys with these top 5 wingers of all time, or even top 10 wingers of all time? Really throw a discussion with me in the chat. Obviously, there's massive names here that maybe I should have gone more in depth in. Nathan Blacklocks of the world was a very heavy try-scoring winger in the competition. Alex Johnston will probably hold up in his points, tries per game sort of look there, but I would say Brian Toto does way more work than a Alex Johnston, and holds up very well, obviously, with his tries per game. So that's a really good stat overall to Brian Toto, and this is my whole argument to you guys. Where does Brian Toto sit for you right now for greatest wingers of all time, or do you want to wait stay and sit until his career is finished and we pan out and we look at the book of what he's done and then name him the greatest winger of all time, because he's definitely on that uptrend that possibly could put him there. So comment down below your thoughts overall, guys. I thought this was an interesting discussion. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Also, go check me out on Wild's Up TV, an incredible channel that me and Levon are building over there if you're a Warriors fan in general. Hope you guys are having a great weekend out there. Make sure you comment down below. Let's go.